Hello, friends, and you are my friends for a little longer, and welcome to the National Public Radio edition of the Jim Cornette Experience, here with my co-host. He's Hawaiian, he's a lion, he has a lot of other names. It's Brian. Hello, Brian.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here on the subdued episode of the Jim Cornette Experience.
Well, for everybody that's thinking I'm on fucking acid, I lost my voice last week, and this is the first recording that we have done since I've gotten it mostly back. It's only been 6 days. It seems like 3 months since my MLW commentary left me voiceless. I was the voice of the voiceless by the time we got finished with that. We're going to talk about all that stuff, my trip to New York, but we are a little subdued today. We apologize for being a few days late with this program that we wanted to do early and instead are doing late. The best laid plans and all that stuff. I feel like I've been beat by a sack of wet hammers, even though I've been home and trying to rest. I've officially, as my mother used to say, bitten off more than I can chew. I am too old for this shit. My schedule now, I've said I've failed at retirement. Now, irrelevancy is another thing that I've completely shit to bed on. As you know, I actually, in some cases, have tried to stay irrelevant because it's easier and I have more free time, but that has not been possible over the last few months. And I apologize to everybody and actually even the last couple of weeks of shows, as you know, I've been going, oh my gosh, I got to do this. I got to do that. Let's record this. Let's get this in. What are we going to talk about? I got blah, blah, blah. So if it's been lackluster over the last few weeks and the schedule we've had to re-rack, I apologize for that. And I am taking steps. I'm not going to cancel any live appearances that I've already advertised, obviously, because people are looking forward to them. We got the Midnight Express reunions coming up, some other things that we'll be talking about. It's all on my website, jimcornette.com. But anything that is not listed on my website is not going to have, well, I can't even say that right. Most of the appearances I have for the rest of the year of 2019 are already up on my website. I'm not going to be taking anything else unless it involves MLW commentary or the NWA commentary, because I got to take care of myself at this point. I'm making way too much money and I'm too successful. I've got to do something about this. But God damn it, things just keep coming up. But you know how that goes.
Well, you just keep saying yes. That's the bigger
well,
problem.
I know. And the thing is, you know, I've still got projects around the house here this year. This is another big landscaping year. I got French drains to put in, greenery, shrubbery, some different things I want to do. And then by this time, the end of the year, next year, I got to have my driveway redone and resurfaced and a foundation put in for a gardening shed that I'm building, et cetera, et cetera. So the part of this will be known as MLW Gardens around Castle Cornette. But anyway, but I am going to try to lighten up and concentrate on things that don't kill me. So anyway, it'll get better. This is the majority of the, God, I'm tired. The majority of the hard trips have been taken already that I'm doing this year. And this last one, I guarantee you, I love my fans in New York, right? Love the fans in New York. New York City and the New Jersey metropolitan area around that can kiss my big fat white ass. I believe that the people that saw me last week will be the last people that ever see me in person in New York City. And I was not alone in this figuring, in this opinion, because a lot of people were like, what the fuck? I'll tell you this in a second, or tell you more about the trip in a second. But on Wednesday night, I was sitting in Secaucus, New Jersey at my hotel. I just got back in time to have dinner at the hotel restaurant before it closed, and I was foodless, trapped there. And I heard the guy next to me at the table talk to the waitress. And I said, excuse me, where are you from? He said, Texas. And I said, well, I said it was good to hear somebody that sounded normal. And he looked at me and he looked around, outside the windows where we were, just looked all around and said, people live here on purpose. And that pretty much summed it up. There's got to be something to fucking matter with anybody that lives within 50 miles of Manhattan in any direction. I'm sorry, but you have a character flaw. There are other places you could go that could be cheaper and better, like anything. Cambodia. Don't get me started here. I'm trying to do the NPR voice. You got out. You live out in the woods now.
Well, I'm within the 50-mile radius, and I have been my entire life. When I was in Long Beach, I was within 50 miles, and out here in the beautiful Tony suburbs, it is also within the 50-mile radius.
Well, it don't seem like 50 miles away. We measure them down here. Let me just say, first of all, before I get to New York, as far as WrestleMania week, I know everybody, and I didn't have time to get on Twitter, but everybody was tweeting me. I tried to catch up when I got back. I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Jim Cornette, about this show or that, all these Outlaw Mud shows, because everybody knows that not only were all the major promotions running serious professional wrestling events that weekend, but also all the goofs and the jackoffs and the play wrestlers were having their Outlaw Mud shows where they get in the ring and they shit and puke and piss and vomit and, on each other and fucking have dance routines and wrestle the Invisible Man and do whatever the fuck they do. And as we've seen, there are a small number of people that will actually pay to see shit like that, literally shit. And then everybody wants me, but all I'm doing at this point, because as I've mentioned over the weekend, I've had more people try to kill me in my sleep than some people have asked for these assholes' autographs, right? So at this point, all I'm doing is giving them publicity for their fucking bullshit. I view these people, and yes, the Dick Spot guy's at the top of the list. He's the most insufferable, egregious example of jackoffs that get in the wrestling business because of lack of regulation. That's another problem with deregulation. Anybody can do this, whether they can do it or not. They think they can, and they play like they can, and they play wrestlers. But I view them as the dog shit that I scrape off the bottom of my fucking shoe after I've walked Harley in the yard and not watched where I stepped. And that's the way that all the people who went to those shows should view it. You didn't watch where you stepped, and as a result, you ended up in a pile of shit. So I'm not going to mention anybody's name, and I'm not going to promo any individual event because it's all a bunch of gaga, and they're not worth my time or my publicity. Hopefully, at some point, some of these people will get horrible terminal illnesses and die miserable deaths in front of their families, and the wrestling industry will be free of this shit, and people won't have to fucking hear about it from the few emotionally stunted people that buy tickets to see it and then have to crow about it afterwards. But if I can certainly watch some German videos if I want to see people shitting and puking and shoving tampons in each other's faces, and the acting will be better. So there will be no Outlaw Mud Show review because they're not worth it. They're not worth my time. They're not worth your money, ladies and gentlemen. They're not worth anything. They can't do something properly. They don't have the talent or the ability. So they instead choose to shit all over it, literally, and basically make a big fucking mess in the ring. And there's enough people, as when we get to WrestleMania, making messes in the ring without doing it on purpose. It was great to see Stephen P. New in New York City. As a matter of fact, some of you people who bought tickets to these, dick events, you might be able to call Stephen P. New and get your money back, because he does often take the cases of people who have been screwed over by some company that fucking took their money and gave them shit for it. But Stephen was there in New York with one of his associates, one of his other attorneys. And by the way, I did say this on television. If it makes it, I don't know whether they'll cut it out or not, but I say, you know why a snake doesn't bite a lawyer? Professional courtesy. But Stephen's one of the good ones. And he was there. The big oil companies are now bowing down to Stephen P. New. He was there with one of his attorney cohorts on the big oil case, and he came by the MLW event, and it was great to see Stephen there. And Brian, what's that number? If anybody wants to call to take advantage of Stephen P. News services, how can they reach him?
888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen.
If you need to sue, call Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, by the way. Speaking of people with principles, it was good to see a few people with principles over the weekend. One of them I didn't even see, but I got to mention this. Is it true? Now, I've heard this. So if this is true, then he does have principles. Eli Drake quit Impact Wrestling rather than do an intergender match. Is that what you've heard?
I heard that he refused to wrestle Tessa Blanchard, and that was it. That was the end.
Well, and by the way, I saw Tessa. She stopped by over the weekend at the MLW event, and I told her what I said on the show a couple months ago. She's my favorite, one of my favorite wrestlers, and certainly I think my favorite lady wrestler these days. She was fucking great, especially on the WOW show. We need more of Tessa, less of everything else. But as Eli Drake said, it wasn't the person. She's a great performer. But it's fucking stupid to have a legitimate top professional wrestler competitively wrestle a fucking woman. And I'm not saying a fucking woman like it's, but it's just, it boggles my mind that people are doing this and think there's nothing wrong with it. As we've talked about many times. So at least one guy has some fucking, I'm sure that they had probably got on his last nerve to begin with, but it was refreshing to see that some people said, no, I'm not going to make myself look like a fucking idiot and make the business look like a fucking bunch of shit just because you don't know how to make matches, Impact Wrestling. And I'm saying, I like Don Callis. I don't know what he had to do with it, if anything, but more people, once again, more people need to stand up and have principles. No, I won't be competitively wrestling this person half my size that's a girl and I'm a guy and supposed to be a main event guy. He was an Impact Wrestling champion, for fuck's sake. No, more people have to say, no, I'm not going to fucking wrestle on these cards with the Invisible Man and the fucking bullshit that goes on. And that would put a fucking crimp in these amateurs' attempts to fucking rape the wrestling business. A couple of other people that have principles that look like the good old days, the Hall of Fame ceremony. This fucking idiot, this lunatic, that why did he have to dress up to tackle Brett also? Did we figure out why he was a Rastafarian? That was what he thought would get him past security without anybody noticing he was going to hit the ring?
I think it may go under that mental illness thing that is now coming out with this guy.
Well, then there was at least a dozen shows he could have got booked on with people of his ilk, but instead he hits the ring of the Hall of Fame. Here comes Shane O'Mac. And one thing I've always said, Shane, I like Shane as a person, and he is a tough motherfucker, and he's got balls. He's got the balls that Vince imagines that he himself has. Shane really does. Vince got big balls, but Shane's are bigger. And Shane's in fucking great shape, and regardless what you think about the McMahons, and I'm not going to be kind to his WrestleMania match here shortly. If you're in a fucking pickle, if Shane's your friend, that's the friends you want on your sides, all I'll say. I've known that for a long time. And Travis Brown, he fits right in. We'll see him in the fucking WWE sooner or later. And then, of course, Davey Boy Jr., boom, Harry Smith comes in there. But the punch of the night, because I've been in these situations where when so many people dogpile on, you can't swing. You got no room to swing. You don't know what you're hitting. You're getting jostled from all sides. There was one time in Charlotte, this guy fucking ran past the cops and just drilled me in the back of the head. I never saw him coming after I'd poked Dusty, right? And the cops grab him and he grabs me in like a headlock. And I'm trying to, I've got a racket in one hand. I don't want to lose, but I can't get a swing back. I'm trying to fucking reach for his face with the other hand, but I'm getting cops' heads and fucking arms. And then Dusty, this all happened in seconds. Dusty saw a guy jump me, and right as the cops go to get him, he rolls out, but is not to expose the business. He does a planche off the apron of the ring like he's diving on me for what I did to him, and he takes us all down, and we're all on the floor, and everybody's scrambling. So nobody's getting this fucking guy at all. He's just being jerked around. I finally get free, And the cops are on him, and the only thing I can see is a fucking leg and a hip, and I'm thinking maybe I can kick him in the nuts. So I'm trying to kick the leg, whatever, and I kick the cop's leg instead. That's how when they did the phony arrest warrant on me as a rib a couple weeks later, they said for assault and battery on a police officer. But then once the cops had him, I'm still mad I ain't got a shot. Dusty gets up and catches my eye and starts swinging at me, so I get out of the way because now he doesn't want to expose the business. He's trying to get a hold of me, and then the match continues on. But you can't get any fucking room. But they were all on him, but it was a chaos. But then as they're dragging him out, they've got him, they're walking him out. Dash Wilder just walks right up next to him, go, boop, take that with you, motherfucker. And he dropped. Boom. Just a short fucking uppercut. Boom. Take that. Boom. Down he goes. So Dash, I followed Dash on Twitter. I'd been following Dawson. I didn't even realize I wasn't following Dash, but I made up for that. So kudos to you, Dash Wilder.
As if we needed more reasons to like the revival. There he goes, flooring the guy who tackled Bret Hart.
Yes, while wearing a Hart Foundation jacket.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was so cool. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what a shoot looks like. And we used to have those 2 or 3 times a week in the old days when people still took wrestling seriously because the people performing it took it seriously. But that's also, boy, did Ring of Honor pick the wrong fucking weekend to do a shoot over the rail angle.
Wrong night.
Well, because once again, if you're going to do a shoot angle, do a shoot angle that looks like a shoot. And immediately when I saw the clip, there were several things. Number one, security didn't come over, which everybody noticed, because they had told security something was going to happen. Well, if you're going to go that far, then you tell security how to act like they're reacting without getting in the way of it, right? But also, as soon as I saw the Enzo Amore, there's the Briscoe brothers and Bubba Ray Dudley. And there's Enzo Amore, and this is a shoot, and this fucking guy is not paralyzed and in intensive care. It's not a shoot. Because either Mark or Jay or Bubba individually would have fucking pulled this guy's eyeballs out and skull fucked him in seconds. So, and out of this big cast, he's big, all right. I think they ought to take the C off the name because he looks soft, flabby, and worthless. But just because he's got that size, once again, the Briscoes or Bubba Ray individually with both Enzo and Cass wouldn't have lasted that long in a shoot. If you're going to do a shoot angle, folks, make it look like a shoot. And why would you want, once again, please, when these people get out of wrestling, don't fucking encourage them to get back in. For fuck's sake, we just get rid of this one guy. I don't know anything about Cass. I guess he just got the other idiot's residual heat, but don't encourage him to get back in. He was going to be a rapper, Enzo, right? And
consensual penis.
Yeah, it would be their worry. They'd have to fucking deal with him. The rap world, now.
Bitch, your wages getting garnished for my image that you tarnished. I think that was one of his great lyrics.
Well, I'm sure the Ring of Honor locker room will be happy to have Enzo Amore around, just like the WWE locker room was.
Well, the only people less happy will be the fans. This is kind of a tone-deaf thing to do for that fan base. They don't want to see these guys.
I didn't hear a lot of people, clamoring for sign Enzo. But anyway, I'm not knocking Ring of Honor here. I'm just saying, if you're going to do a shoot angle, for one thing, make it look like a shoot. And for another thing, do it with somebody that anybody would want to fucking see. The trip last week, let me just say this. A lot of people said, well, Cornette, once again, if you didn't insist on driving, if you just fly up there and fucking knew, oh, okay, well, there was a measles outbreak, so I want to get in a death tube with a lot of people with dry air, with my bad voice, plus measles going around. The flying was not the problem. The problem was the city itself. I want to just give you a little example, and I'm not the only person that worked this hard. Everybody on the MLW crew was on this schedule. A lot of the guys did more multiple shows, but they're younger. But I have no idea how they did it or how they had the energy to do it or whatever. But the drive to New York City was the easiest part, and the drive back. That was the easiest part of the week. I left on Monday, and in 8 hours, I drove 500 miles. Beautiful weather, Sirius Radio 70s channel turned up, drove right through West Virginia, through the end of Maryland, up into Pennsylvania that way, right toward Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Nice, easy drive, sitting there, then have a nice dinner at the hotel, get in the hot tub. I knew I was going to have a hard week, so that Monday was easy. It took me 8 hours to drive 500 miles. The next day, I'm a mere 250 miles, 4-hour drive from Secaucus, and I get there, and the last 50 miles is a little dodgy. But I get there and I stay at the Hilton Garden Inn, and I can reveal this because it's not like I will ever be back to this fucking place either. But the Hilton Garden Inn in Secaucus is right near the entrance to the Holland Tunnel, and it's right off the New Jersey Turnpike. But as I mentioned, I found the back way, so I didn't have to get on the New Jersey Turnpike and risk my life and my vehicle. I drive in the back way and I park right there. They've got free parking. A nice garage there right outside the front door that you can walk in, but you are trapped in this goddamn area where all it is how to describe it. It's turnpikes and off ramps and buildings. And if I had gone past the entrance to the hotel accidentally, which was about 8 feet wide, my next stop was New York City, the Holland Tunnel. Or the Lincoln Tunnel, you can't fucking turn around, right? It's just chaos. And you can't walk anywhere. So I knew that because of my weird hours, I was not going to be able to eat at the hotel restaurant past Wednesday night. I had to stock up food because there's no place delivering in Secaucus at 2:00 in the fucking morning. There's no place you can walk to. I certainly wasn't going to try to drive around in that area. So what I did was I got a bag of 6 Wendy's doubles. Not triples, but doubles. The triples in the microwave, there's too much meat. The bun disintegrates by the time you get the meat warm enough. So the doubles is just right. Cut them in half. So I had 6 Wendy's double cheeseburgers in the hotel fridge in my room. And that's what I ate for dinner when I'd get in after midnight, Thursday night and Friday night, etc. So anyway, the point is, the drive up there was easy. Then I check in. And I spend a lot of time on Tuesday evening studying the TV formats and going over the paperwork and the things that I had to do as my announcing requirements and some of the things I was kibitzing on as far as helping guys with promos or whatever the case. Wednesday, I told you I wasn't going to drive through any of those tunnels or across those bridges. They had to send a car service for me. And I'm across the Queens is not that far from Secaucus as the vulture flies, as they say. But the hotel that all the crew is staying at where they're having production meetings is in New Rochelle. How many miles, just if you were just to drive it, how many miles would you say it is from New Rochelle to Secaucus, New Jersey?
Ooh, I don't know. 25, 30 maybe?
Tops, right? Tops 30 miles. And then back to Queens is maybe 15 miles, maybe halfway back, and then 15 miles back over to my hotel, right? So what should have been anywhere else in the world, an hour in a car to the hotel in the morning, then to the show, then back to my hotel, was 3 hours plus every fucking day. At 8:00 in the morning, I would leave in the car to service to drive to New Rochelle or ride to New Rochelle. 20 miles, like you said, 25 miles, whatever the fuck, an hour and a half one morning, an hour each the other 2 mornings. Then from there, after the production meeting and everything, they mobilized cars, and we got in the fucking car, and it was an hour at least to Queens. And now where this is not a car service, this is much of the crew, and they had runners and production assistants, but it's grown adult men. Me and a couple of the TV producers and a driver and a GPS that's hooked up to the front of the car there. And we're going, what the fuck? What the fuck? What does this mean? Where are we going? 4 adult men and a GPS, you can't fucking figure it out. And then after the show, getting out. And so every morning, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I leave the hotel at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm back at midnight or, fucking after. I think Friday night was like almost 1 o'clock by the time that we figured out a place the cops hadn't closed off the fucking bridge. So my 1,560-mile round trip to New York and back from Louisville, Kentucky took 26 hours. I was in the car more than a third of that 3 days in a row just to go to work and back, just to fucking drive a less than 60-mile round trip in that fucking place with the chaos and the traffic and the horns and the people and the fucking cars going everywhere and merging in and going the wrong way and the roads that lead to nowhere that give you kidney disease because there's so many potholes. When you fucking, the shocks in everybody's car must be completely shot. You feel like you've had a match by the time you get out of a car driving across those fucking unmaintained fucking ramps and roads and with holes big enough to fucking bury goddamn German shepherds in. And the garbage in the streets. Why is it, Brian? Do they not have room for dumpsters? Is that what the deal is? Do they only have garbage pickup one day a month? Why are there piles of garbage on every street in Manhattan, 5 feet tall and 30 feet long, like giant snowbanks of garbage and filth that rats are running around in, breeding like crazy, and fucking cockroaches are goddamn mutating in? Why do they do that? On the street, on the side.
Hold on. You were in New Rochelle, Secaucus, and Queens. When did you have time to examine the garbage situation in Manhattan?
Apparently, to get from Queens back to Secaucus, you got to go through Manhattan, because I did it 3 different ways, 3 different days in a row. All right. Well, anyway, so
there are dumpsters, though, in various places in the greater metropolitan area.
Well, the point is, to New York and back, 1,560 miles, took me 26 hours total in my car. 150 miles of driving around New York took over a third of that time. Plus, as I mentioned, between the production meeting that started at 9:30 each morning and then the show that ended past 11 o'clock each night, I was at work basically 35 hours. So there's 45 hours. So in this whole fucking deal, from the time I left Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, where I actually went and visited Susie at the post office to make sure the Cornette's collectibles customers were taken care of. And Susie is so hurt that you haven't called her. She was even drinking over it the other day. Anyway, from Monday morning at 8 o'clock to Sunday afternoon. Yeah, well, not at work. She was sitting home alone waiting for the phone to ring. But anyway, Monday morning at 8 o'clock to Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock when I got back is 150 hours. I was in the car 26 hours driving there and back. I was in the car another 10 to go into work and back. I was at the shows or the meetings a total of 37 hours. So at 46, 6 is 72. So half of the time that I was gone was either in the car, at work, or blah, blah, blah. And then sleeping in a 72-hour period. I got 5 hours one night, 4 hours the next night, and 5 hours the next night. And then on the way home, voiceless, worn out, I stop at a beautiful Hilton Garden Inn, brand new place, right? And I figure I'm going to get a good night's sleep. This was on Saturday night on the way home. And I'm just about to go to bed when somebody had tweeted me, "Hey, your website's jacked up." What? Get on the website. You click on all the links. It says error. You can't order anything. You can't read anything. What the fuck? I call home. Stace is the technical master, right? And I said, what's going on? She said, I don't know. We can't get a hold of the guy that did the website because he's on his honeymoon. So she calls customer service with the hosting company, whatever. Somehow there was a file. I don't know. Who knows? Get it fixed. Well, now I'm going to go to sleep. It's midnight, right? Now I don't have to worry. Guess what the motherfucker in the room previous to me did? The old rib that you used to do when you were mad at a hotel and wanted other people to be mad at them too. Some asshole set the alarm clock for 6 a.m. I'm in this fucking, and all of a sudden in the dark room, the hotel, the alarm goes off at 6:00 in the morning, and I'm, what the fuck? Well, now I'm awake. So there's another night I got 5-6 hours of sleep. So by the time I got home, I was dead to the world, could not speak. And I can't do schedules like this. And once again, I was not alone. All the MLW technical crew and folks were dealing with this, but here's to give you an example of my menu. I wrote this down because people would not believe this. From Monday through Sunday, here's what I ate. 4 Hilton Garden Inn cheeseburgers, 3 dozen buffalo wings, 8 Wendy's double cheeseburgers, 1 double quarter pounder from McDonald's, 6 orders of fries, a ham and cheese sandwich, and 8 Reese's peanut butter cups. And I still lost 1.5 pounds. Because when you leave the fucking hotel at 8:00 in the morning and you get back after midnight, where are you going to fucking eat? And then one day we did go and I got a cheeseburger because on the street next to the fucking building where the MLW events were, there was Vietnamese food. There was Thai food. There was Korean food. There was all other kind of food that I have no idea what the fuck it is and ain't going to try eating it the first time right before I have to sit in a hot building under TV lights and scream for hours, right? So I went to a Mexican place, got a cheeseburger. Oh, I should add that to the list. And 1 Mexican cheeseburger. But the next day, I'm already getting hoarse. It's 40 fucking degrees. It's raining. I'm not going to walk 2 blocks down. So I had somebody go get me a fucking ham and cheese sandwich from a deli. And there's the ham and cheese sandwich came in. But so anyway, having said all that, it was a goddamn, what's the word I'm searching for? It was, I'm tired. It was a challenging trip and a challenging experience, but by God, by cracky, I got back. And, and the other rib was Thursday night, Rich Bikini, and he's great. I like working with Rich. We have really melded and blended. I'd never met him before, but we've really, we hit it off, and I enjoyed hanging out with him. But we were sitting in the crow's nest at the announce desk and wondered why it was so loud. We were screaming at each other when the music was playing, and we come to find out they had put us right in front of a PA speaker. So the next day we said, hey, it's so loud up here, we're really having to really push our voices. They said, oh, let's turn that speaker off. So Friday, when my voice was already almost fried, it was easier. But Thursday, that was the big one.
Well, you've talked so much about the travel and the food. How did the actual event, how did doing the commentary work out for you?
The MLW events were great. I also did the meet and greet beforehand and met, some of the folks in New York I don't get a chance to see very often, but the TVs, I thought got great response from the fans live when they were seeing the matches. And then also our Battle Riot special. I appreciate the feedback that I got. Of course, now, in addition to BN Sports, MLW, and you can watch them on YouTube if you don't have BN, folks. They put the shows up a day or two after they are aired on MLW's YouTube channel, but also now they've made a deal with UK Free Sports. So I am on TV in UK and Ireland for the first time in a long time. And so I appreciate the feedback I've been getting from that. Once again, some of the things are not my cup of tea. I believe we could have had a successful event. And I met him. He was a nice young man, but Jimmy Havoc from England, I don't believe that showed the World Heavyweight Championship in the best light, having a New York street fight with, a guy who's a freak of nature. I'm a filthy Tom Lawler fan. He's a legitimate athlete. But past that, I've got to say something about Loki. As I've told in the past a couple of stories about Loki doing some questionable things, and he's had problems. Every time I'm around Loki, it's like I'm a curse. I go to a promotion that he's at, and he quits seconds afterwards. Not even about me, just about something else. But the stories I've told about him, were years ago, and he's now one of the veterans. And I've got to admit that not only has he been turning in great performances, but he is taking somewhat of a locker room leader position in, helping some of the other guys and helping bridge the gap between the production crew and the wrestlers. And he's been serious and he's been working his ass off. And so I have to, when I knock people because they do something questionable, I also have to put them over, and I have to put him over for that. He's been one of the bright spots there. Jacob Fatu, we talked about, and the whole Contra unit, Joseph Samael and Simon Gotch, who has really been taking a back seat to everybody's been taking a back seat to Jacob Fatu, but it's a unit that's getting over. They get heat, even with the people that are allegedly smart. And I've enjoyed what they're doing. Selena De La Renta, have you seen any of her?
I have not.
She is the best female talker since Sunny was Tammy. And
wow.
From what I understand, she was going to train to wrestle and got injured, but then segued or transitioned into the managerial position she's in now. And honestly, that was serendipity. That's a good injury if that's the case, because she has personality. She can talk. She looks the part that she's in. I can't say enough about her promos, but I mentioned Alexander Hammerstone. Mark it down. If he keeps his head on straight and is injury free, he's going to make a lot of money in professional wrestling. But the whole Dynasty group, Richard Holliday's one of those guys that he is good on his own, but because he's in the middle of a physical freak like Hammerstone, and on the other side of him is MJF, he's not getting the attention that he's due, but he's doing a great job. But Maxwell Jacob Friedman, I'm going to say this right now, besides the fact that he's certainly top 5 in promos today in the business. He's 22 years old. And he's been doing this for 2 or 3 years. I accused his mother of fucking around with Eddie Graham, because I said, how the fuck? He reminds me of me. And that is not a bad thing in terms of he's already paying attention to everything else in the wrestling business. He was up there when Rich and I were doing voiceovers and recording some wild lines and checking out the equipment before the show. He's up there asking us, well, how does this work and how does that work, about announcing and commentary and the equipment. And he was talking to Nelson Swegler, who was one of the gurus of the WWF TV in the 80s, who's now basically the production major domo at MLW. And he was asking him different questions about editing and post-production. He studies all forms of the business. And not only does he get the physical aspect, and he's wise beyond his years there, but also the fucking promos and the personality that he puts into them, and also the fact that he's a mature guy and he's together and he's studying this thing. He's the kind of guy, I don't know what he's going to do in wrestling. The one thing he wasn't blessed with was great size or whatever. Like I told Batista one time in OVW, I said, if I could put my brain in your body for a year, we could both retire. The only thing he doesn't have is size, but with his personality, I won't say character, I won't even say gimmick, it's his personality that works for him, that he's not the biggest dog in the fight. He's the kind of guy that in 20 years, he will either be in creative or in management in whatever the biggest wrestling promotion in the country is. He's that kind of guy. So, I'm enjoying working with a lot of these guys. There's some young kids. I don't want to mention everybody and then not mention other people. Then they'll all get their feelings hurt. But there are a lot of fresh faces that haven't done television that just need experience. And they're going to be, you're looking at the guys that are going to be major names in the next, window of 1 to 3 years, the way things are going these days. Things move quickly. But overall, with the exception of the hardcoredness of the freak guy from England, who looks like, in all honesty, he ought to be fucking washing cars somewhere. I was pleasantly surprised with everybody else's effort. And I think the television program goes together well, and it's easier to watch than The ones I've tried to watch in the past, the 2-hour show was easier to watch than the 3-hour Raw. I'll tell you that. And the 1-hour shows are really easy to watch. And you understand what's going on. And we're allowed to say the word belt. So that's a good thing. But that was it was challenging physically, and I apologize for the fact that I needed to take a few days off afterwards. But once again, when I got home, all the Cornette's Collectibles people are taken care of. Everything's gone out if you ordered before Thursday. And I've got to mention that this weekend, I talked about Stephen P. New. This weekend, if you hear this in time, we're going to be Saturday night, April 13th. We're going to be in Madison, West Virginia for the Midnight Express being inducted in the All-Star Wrestling Hall of Fame, and also the Legends match with Tracy Smothers and Bobby Fulton, where Stephen will have proclamations from the fans in the state of West Virginia for their contributions to the wrestling industry. And also, I got news just a day or two ago on the Twitter machine, because everybody knows I'm doing color at the Crockett Cup in Charlotte, or Concord, North Carolina, at the Cabarrus Arena on April 27th, which will be the next big NWA event. And you can watch it live and stream it or be there live, do all that kind of stuff. But the Crockett Cup Tag Team Tournament will be the featured part of the event. Also, the NWA Championship will be defended with Nick Aldis and his former friend and now rival Marty Scurll. But one of the first round matches is the Rock and Roll Express against the Briscoe brothers. And normally people would think I'd be going, oh, wow, this is going to be great. You know, the two of these classic tag teams, the Rock and Roll and the Briscoes, but I am not. I'm not sure that Ricky and Robert know what they're doing or know what they've bitten off here. Because it's the Rock and Roll Express are Hall of Famers. They were 5-time NWA World Tag Team Champions. They've had literally dozens and dozens of regional titles. They're the first tag team in the history of wrestling to compete in 4 different decades as a team. They've done so much. They don't need to do this. It's a lot of people are saying it's a feel-good moment. It's drawing back to the history of the NWA and the Crockett Cup. But the Briscoes don't do feel-good moments. And I know, and like I said, Mark and Jay Briscoe, if it had been a shoot with Enzo Amore or Cass or both of them, it wouldn't have lasted nearly that long. Mark and Jay intend to win this thing. They want to go all the way through. And I don't think they're going to fucking cooperate in dialing things back for Ricky and Robert. And I'm afraid, you know, I know Ricky Morton did a goddamn Canadian Destroyer on LAX as Robert Gibson was pinning the other one over the last week at one of those shows. I know that they're freaks and they have kicked Father Time's ass, but I'm worried about the Rock and Roll Express facing the Briscoes in Charlotte at the Crockett Cup, simply because I don't think the Briscoes are going to play nice and they may want to make a point. And I don't know at this point whether Ricky and Robert can keep up with them physically. So I'm one of those people who something may happen and it may not be good for the Rock and Roll is all I'm going to say. I'm going to enjoy the rest of it. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy calling that match. But anyway, there will be meet and greets, photo ops, panels, Q&As. Me, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, Billy Corgan, everybody that day. We urge you to go to NWA.com or the various JimCornette.com, click on events and appearances, how you can get to be a part of all that. The VIP is an extra ticketed thing, but it goes all day, so you're going to get your money's worth. Also, we got to mention the Vice series, Dark Side of the Ring, premiered this past week with Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth and their love story. And it's one of the shows that I had not seen. I've seen 4 out of the 6. I'd not seen that one. I've not seen Moolah's yet. But I've seen advanced screeners on the rest of them. And I encourage everybody to check it out and follow them on Twitter at Dark Side of the Ring. You know, it's not only is it one of the better produced, better shot, more artsy wrestling documentary series that I've ever seen, especially from an outside source and not someone directly inside the wrestling business, but also if they do good ratings on these, they're going to do more of them. And I want to see some more of these because they've got so many stories that they had planned. Originally, it may have been a 10-episode run. Then they green-lighted 6. They have some more on standby to do if it goes well. We want that to happen. And next week will be very interesting, the Montreal Screwjob. And we are going to do our show here next week, provided my voice hangs in there, talking about that and some other things that may come up in that period of time. But anyway, Dark Side of the Ring on Vice TV, or you can get it on Sling or Swing or whatever the fuck. Are you a slinger, Brian? Have you seen that commercial? We're slingers.
Yeah, I'm not a slinger, no.
You're not a slinger? I don't even know what sling is. Or swing. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm a swinger anymore, much less a slinger. But anyway.
It's what everyone's been clamoring for in 2019. They said, if only all these years later we knew anything about Montreal. If only someone had said anything about this. But now we'll find out something, I guess.
Well, actually, there is going to be something found out that has not been publicly related before. And when that happens, that's why we're going to do a show about it next week.
Ah, very interesting.
Because there's only one thing that I know of that has not yet fully been told, and that is what's being told. There may be more things that are unknown, but I don't know what they are, if that makes any sense.
It makes all the sense in the world and none whatsoever.
At the same time, speaking of outside programs, before we get to this fucking Wrestlemania nonsense, outside programs, talking about wrestling, Jon Oliver, last week. How can I say that better? The episode of Last Week Tonight that aired last week on HBO. And I've liked Jon Oliver since he was on The Daily Show. I don't watch The Daily Show anymore because Jon Stewart pissed us all off and retired. And son of a bitch, apparently he's good at it. He's not like me. You can't find Jon Stewart anymore. I can't. But I've not been able to get into The Daily Show since he left. But Jon Oliver, this program, did an entire, 25 minutes on the WWE and whether or not the wrestlers should be classified as they are as independent contractors or whether they should be employees. And I guess great minds think alike, because how long ago was it we did a show on that?
We've done a few shows about that.
We've done a few, didn't we?
Scott Williams.
Scott Williams, the late Scott Williams, was on because he obviously, in addition to be co-writing some of the major wrestling books, also was an attorney and knew the ins and outs of that. Jon Oliver did a great job. I thought some people said, well, in going for the comedy, he weakened the points. And it's a fucking comedy show, right? It's a fucking comedy bus.
That's the way he does his show. I mean, if you watch any of his shows, that's how he does it. Yeah.
And then some people were like, oh, well, he didn't give the WWE a chance to risk. Like, just because they're fans of the promotion, they're actually fans of the wrestlers that are being shafted, and they're taken up for the promotion that's shafting the wrestlers. I don't know how that works. And then somebody tweeted, well, Cornette, did you, on the companies that you ran, give your employees 401ks and insurance and this? Yeah, in a fucking regional territory and a wrestling school, of course we did. You fucking morons. The whole point of this is that, yes, from the dawn of time, and I'll say this briefly because if you want to look up our shows, if they're on one of our many YouTube channels that we've done about it in the past, but wrestlers were independent contractors throughout the history of professional wrestling. They fit the definition of independent contractor, and they were treated as such, for good or bad, by every promotion ever in history. That no longer applies to the modern day WWE. The closest that any other promotion has really come that could have made their wrestlers employees was WCW for 2 years in the 90s. They actually then they started making enough money, became big enough, had the guys signed up to exclusive contracts. But if they had done that, then they would have gone out of business anyway. They did it to begin with, even without doing that. It might have been a little quicker. But there is no And Dave Meltzer has just run some numbers in this week's Observer on what they could do. They're going to make $2 billion next year or whatever. They made $100 or almost $1 billion, 900 and something million dollars this year. There is no part of the independent contractor statute that is written by the IRS that a WWE wrestler now fits. Is there? One single one?
No.
They are told where to go, what to do. They're under exclusive contract. They can't work for anybody else. They have to dress as they are told. They have to use the name they're told. They have to finish their matches as they are told. But they still have, and I'm not even talking about retirement plans and pensions and et cetera and unions, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. I'm talking about there is no reason, financial or employment-wise, besides saving a ton of fucking money for the company, that the WWE wrestlers should not be classified as employees and have their road expenses paid for and have insurance while they're working for the company. Do I think that if some guy works for the WWE for a year or a year and a half, that he should then get a pension for the rest of his life? No. That's ridiculous. It doesn't happen that way in the real world either. It's just that there are many companies that do everything else in the world. There's only one company at this level in the world that does this. So just because you're a wrestler for 30 years, but you only worked for the WWE for 2.5 doesn't mean that they owe you for the rest of their life or your life. But while you're working for them, there's no fucking excuse otherwise than they keep the independent contractor statute up by continuing to do this so that it saves them a ton of money, even though they're making 6 tons of money. They should have their road expenses paid. Everything, just like any other professional sport. They should also have health insurance, not for just injuries in the ring, but for themselves and their family while they're working for the company instead of being made to pay for it themselves. Where a lot of these guys have gone wrong with these lawsuits is they get ambulance chasers like that fucking Constantine, whatever his name was. It couldn't even, boy, I'd read the writs he'd written. And if you'd read the writs that he'd written, you know they were really rotten written writs. They didn't get a Stephen P. New. They got these ambulance chasers, and they go after the concussion thing. And that, as we talked about on the program, is never going to fucking fly, especially because the guys that had the biggest gripe and the biggest claim were the ones who'd worked for the company the least and could be proven had probably injured themselves worse elsewhere. That was all just fucking gaga, and it made all the boys' lawsuits look bad because some guys couldn't get their shit together and figure out what was going on. The independent contractor statute is where they are most vulnerable. And if a good attorney took it up on behalf of guys who had legitimate recognition and could get people to listen to their side of the story, then it would probably, something would be done about it. But do I think that also that besides just the PR move, which it was totally a public relations move, that the WWE started providing the addiction and the rehab for guys with drugs and alcohol. That was completely PR. No other reason. Vince even said that. But besides that, when you get down to it, Vince is a Republican. And he's, as we've said, he's a suave, debonair, intelligent version of Donald Trump in a lot of ways. Just because he's a billionaire, he thinks that everybody else could be a billionaire if they worked as hard as him. Well, now nobody works as hard as Vince, but that's just bullshit. That's what Trump thinks. Trump thinks in his own deluded mind because his father gave him all that money, but it was his dad, so it's all in the family, and he's worked hard, and he's a big star, and everybody could do that if they were just as good and smart and worked as hard as me. No, they fucking can't. Not everybody's going to become a billionaire, whether they work hard, if you're not born in the right fucking family. I don't care how hard you work, without luck and being in the right place at the right time and by fucking a lot of people, you're not going to be a billionaire. I don't care how smart you are, how good you are, how hard you work. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. You've got to get some lucky breaks, and you have to fuck people. And that's why the Republicans are the kings of fucking people, because they don't mind fucking people. And in business, the more business you do, the bigger business you are, the more people that you have to fuck. And not only fuck them, but you have to learn not to even feel bad about fucking them, which is why I'm a rotten businessman. But luck and being in the right place at the right time, I'm still doing okay. But I ain't never going to be a billionaire. I don't know if I'll ever get to fucking 20 million, right? You know, that probably at this point is out of bounds too. But that's what they think. And so I can see Vince going, well, he didn't have to do drugs and alcohol. Now he had to do steroids, Vince, because of the way that you hired people that only did fucking massive amounts of steroids in the 80s because of your bodybuilding fetish. And then no, they didn't have to take fucking painkillers, except by the time that you and everybody else in the business finished exposing it, so that the guys have to do 5 times as much damage to their body to get half the pop they used to. They kind of got to take painkillers. Then it's not all Vince's fault, because then you got these outlaw mud show fucks that have come in that think that this is what wrestling is, to crash through multiple fucking pieces of furniture and fucking hit each other over the head with shit for real. They got to take painkillers. I'll agree with you, Vince. It wasn't your fault that the guys in the 80s were rock stars and did a lot of cocaine and damaged their hearts. That was not Vince McMahon's fault, nor any other promoter's fault. Otherwise than that, the steroids, yeah. The painkillers, yeah. And here's the deal. When I blew my knee the night before the Great American Bash in Baltimore, where I had that single match with Paul Lee Dangerously, the tuxedo match, right? And I was going to get my win back over Paul Lee, even though our teams had been fucked up. They could have brought me to the ring in an iron lung. I was not going to miss that match, right? But I blew my knee, tore the cartilage the night before in Philly, jumping off the apron of the ring when Terry Gordy threw a table in over my fucking head, and I got out of the way in the nick of time. And in Baltimore, Maryland, at a pay-per-view, I went around in the locker room asking, because my knee was so swollen up so bad, I need to get it drained after the fact. But it was swollen up. It was hurting. I put my knee brace on. I strapped it up. I went around. I asked everybody, got a pain pill, got a pain pill, got a pain pill. I ended up with 2 mismatched pain pills out of the whole locker room. That was in 1989, right? Now, if I'd asked for cocaine, I would have had to turn it all down, right? It'd have been too much. But now if you go in the locker room, I doubt very seriously if you could find in a lot of locker rooms a speck of cocaine, but I guarantee you, if anybody wanted to be honest, you could still find a bunch of pain pills, because that's what it's become. Since it stopped being simulated combat that was controlled by the guys and the people didn't know how it was done, into a fucking stunt show where everybody's smart and popping on the fucking moves. What do you think they're going to fucking take? Everybody's still human. This is not computer generated. So I believe that the WWE at least should give the guys their road expenses paid. They should have health insurance at the very least, and some of the benefits of employment while they were employed by WWE. And if any other wrestling company gets that big, they should do the same thing, but they're not. It's a long way off, so we'll cross that bridge when it falls on us. But besides that, there would be no reason why the WWE couldn't take what they spend on catering at every television taping, match that, and put it in a fund that would continue to grow and accrue and be reinvested, like I've got for my own personal retirement, that then guys could be paid out of that fund. Because I'm seriously talking about the catering now. Back when I refused to eat the WWE catering, it was fucking dry grilled chicken breasts and a fucking bowl of pasta. You stuck the fork in and came out with the whole bowl all together, right? Now it looks like a goddamn 5-star Michelin fucking restaurant. If there was just that money every year put in a fund for retired wrestlers that were for no reason of their own ill and losing their house because of medical bills, because they got cancer or they got a kidney disease or they got some kind of disease that human beings normally get, not related to the wrestling business, and they just got no health insurance because it's so expensive that unless you're employed And believe me, if I didn't make good money, I would have no health insurance right now, because for me and Stacy alone, it's $10,000 a year. So there's no reason they can't do something like that. And the Jon Oliver piece was funny, but it was ribbon on the square, as we used to say. It brought up a lot of shit that ain't fucking funny. And there's no reason anymore. The money is there. And another thing, Kevin Dunn and all these unnamed executives that came from this big company and that big company, and they get the stock options and they're millionaires, and not one of them has ever, I'm sorry, I hate to be wrestling centric here, but there's a lot of fucking executives. There's a lot of marketing people. There's a lot of executives that do executive things that executives do. And there's schools for them all over the world, and they produce them by the tens and hundreds of thousands around the globe. There ain't a lot of great wrestlers. And it's the World Wrestling, well, used to be World Wrestling Federation. Now it's World Wrestling Entertainment. As Jon Oliver said, it's not World Empty Ring. All these executives never take a bump, don't cut their head with a fucking razor blade, don't work sick, don't work hurt, don't work away from their families for weeks at a fucking time, don't get in there and take that flat back bump that's the equivalent of a 35-mile-an-hour rear end fucking collision every time on that fucking mat. Don't do all the things the wrestlers do, but they become millionaires because they went to fucking school. There ain't nothing hard about going to school. There ain't even nothing hard about graduating. But there's a lot of things hard about being a great professional wrestler and being at that level and able to perform for a company like that. And they get a spot for 3 or 4 years. They get paid well while they're there, and they get nothing when they fucking leave. And these fucking executives in the suits and ties and the polished shoes become millionaires while they're going home to their fucking Stepford wife in their fucking Stamford apartment. Fuck you. Take care of the boys. Vince always wanted to be one of the boys. And Vince always considered himself down deep, I think, one of the boys. Well, be one of the boys, Vince. You got enough money. Take the money that you're going to use to start the football league that nobody wants to, literally nobody has been asking for, but just because you can't stand to fail and you know the time is short and you've got to reverse the failure, take that money and just put it in an account one time for the boys to live on for the rest of their lives. And they'd all be fine. Instead of fucking giving more phony pieces of paper from the fucking stock scam to your goddamn executives that anybody that's graduated with degrees and whatever you have to graduate to be and get a degree in to be an executive, anybody can fucking do that. For fuck's sake, the CEO and the CFO and the FUCKO. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a rant there, but there's no excuse for it now. In independent wrestling, in the territory days, yes. Because now the wrestlers are not totally blameless. You got a bunch of fucking wild Indian fucking heathens running around doing all kinds of stuff. Enzo Amore is a classic example. You got a bunch of heathens going around doing a bunch of goofy bullshit when you got wrestlers. But that's part of the appeal, because that's why the fucking executives can't be wrestlers. Because you can't be a normal person and be a great wrestler. So it takes somebody that's a little bit off kilter. In the old days, in the territories, no, you didn't want a lot of the wrestlers to be your employees. But also the financial scale was not such that could be done. Now with the WWE, it is. And I don't see how they get away with it. I don't see how the government lets them get away. Oh, wait. The government letting them get away with it. Wouldn't you know who won the pony? Who's the pig face in the fucking White House? Who's friends with Vince? Who gave Linda a job? Linda at least got out before the shit got on her. The rest of these fuckers that are leaving, or they say they're unemployable. But Jon Oliver did something. We'll see if it sparks anything or not, but it probably won't, because the government don't care, because they're deregulating everything else, because Donald Trump is like Vince McMahon. He thinks that every single one of you out there, if you worked hard enough and were as smart as them, could be a billionaire, regardless of your other personal situations, such as being a normal fucking human being. with parents that didn't give you $20 million fucking dollars. Do you have anything to add to that before we talk about WrestleMania?
Just want to add real quick here that you can hear this week on the Super Studcast. Les Thatcher joins the show for over 90 minutes of conversation with him and Ron discussing many of their great memories from Florida, Knoxville, and beyond. A really, really fun conversation. This was a blast to be a part of. You can hear that right now for patrons of the Studcast at patreon.com/Studcast. Also want to remind everyone, the 605 Superpodcast, the mothership.
You told me you weren't going to get loud today.
That was as loud as I'm going to get, and I'm going to try not to get that loud again.
Well, because I'm subdued because of my voice, and you're subdued because you have little people sleeping in your office.
That's right. The situation with your throat threw off our entire recording schedule, so now you're intruding on my baby time.
Okay, so blame me.
Yes.
Everybody has to blame me. Anyway, what is it on your program, The Mothership?
The Mothership. I want to thank everyone for the tremendous reaction. Opening Day Star Wars, the biggest opening day Star Wars we've ever had, and episode 97 has shattered several records and continues to grow. Thank you to everyone who's downloading it. Episode 98's in production, should hopefully be out within the next several days. Joe Malenko, Jody Simon, returns to the show for a really fun discussion about various things, including Knoxville, including being a referee, including Carl Gotch and training with Carl Gotch, as well as his father, the great Malenko's relationship with Eddie Graham. You could hear that, plus so much more, including some really fun audio. I believe we're going to even have some more classic audio on the 605 Super Podcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts, The Mothership. And want to also mention, all episodes are available in the archive at 605pod.com.
If that's the mothership, is this the fathership? Where is the fathership? Because you can't have a single mothership.
It's a single mothership. It's a single mothership.
But then how do you get baby ships?
It's in the Bible.
Well, all right. I'm not into fiction. Speaking of fiction, I watched WrestleMania. I was going to watch it as it happened on Sunday night. I got home and I recorded it because I went to bed at Sunday night about 7 o'clock and slept for 13 hours. But over the few days that followed, I watched it like a third at a time. Because I think the show clocked in at, 18 hours total? And also, by the way, for all the people who were stranded out there in that fucking rain, because I got back late at night, and I saw several nights, as I mentioned, and I saw the roads and the highways and the turnpikes and all that stuff at that time of night. I can't imagine with it raining on top of that and the thousands of people getting out of, they've completely fucked the people that spent the most money to get there. And I saw a lot of people tweeting, well, I would have just walked instead of waiting 3 hours for a train. Can you try to explain to anybody that's never been to that fucking madhouse why that you can't walk away from MetLife Stadium?
Yeah, it's one thing if you're in New York City at Madison Square Garden or something and you say, oh, it's pouring rain, I'll go walk into someplace. I'll go get something to eat, I'll find a hotel, whatever. MetLife Stadium's in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to walk to. And it was a zoo. I've heard horror stories from people who got caught in the rain, who were waiting online for an Uber that never came. Just horror stories. But it's in the middle of nowhere. You're not going in.
But now it's not. It's in the middle of nowhere, and at the same time, it's in the middle of town. Because the middle of nowhere there is. How long would you have to walk? It would be miles to just get out of the parking lots, right?
Yeah.
If you left the stadium and just started walking, say, I've got no train, I got no cab, I got no car, I'm just going to walk to wherever the fuck. It would be miles just to get out of the parking lots. Then you would have to cross the New Jersey Turnpike or the Meadowlands Parkway or the fucking Garden State Park or all those parkways and turnpikes and major roads that at any time of the day or night have cars doing 70, 80 miles an hour and fucking heavy traffic. It's like you are trapped. You can see city all around you, but you can't get to anything, right? So for people that have never been there who was saying, well, I should have just walked, it's not an option. It'd be like trying to walk off Alcatraz. You ain't gonna make it very far. And I can see where nobody could get an Uber because at fucking 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night, Monday morning, with all those thousands of people waiting for trains that couldn't come because they left the fucking train pilots or train engineers off because it was after midnight and they've got their union rules. And then the show ended so late that New Jersey said they weren't ready for it. If an Uber or a taxi cab had gotten onto the grounds, people would have rioted trying to get in it first. It had to be mass chaos, the likes of which most people in that situation had never seen before. So there were thousands of people waiting for a few trains and in the rain. Some people didn't get out till fucking 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. They're the ones we should be sorry for, not you and me that just, I watched the show in 3 different sections and you took a nap in the middle of it. So, but yeah, that's just another. And I mean, even if it had been Madison Square Garden, people, you can go somewhere to get in out of the rain, but it's impossible to get out of the city. It's just goddamn chaos. Folks, just trust me. If you've never been, you don't want to fucking go unless you are very wealthy and you can afford a limousine or something to take you everywhere you want to go. And even then, you're going to be in it for a while, but at least it'll be comfortable. But watching WrestleMania, and I just watched the pay-per-view version, so I didn't see the Battle Royal or whatever the fuck went on before that, where they put everybody that they didn't feel was good enough, apparently, to be on the main show. And one of those, wasn't Braun Strowman supposed to be a big, huge star? And then was it last year that he won the tag belts with a 10-year-old kid?
Yes. And
this year he's not even on the show.
He was in the Battle Royal.
Whose girlfriend did he fuck? How did he get heat? What happened? Well, did I strike a nerve there? I'm just saying, what could you possibly do to get that much heat? That a guy that looks like that should be Vince McMahon's wet dream, was partners with a 10-year-old kid last year and this year didn't even make the pay-per-view.
They have botched it with Braun Strowman so many times. It's not like he's a 5-star worker or anything, but this guy has so much ability that could be harnessed correctly, and they blow it with him every single time. I don't even know what he's doing anymore.
Well, and of course, the Revival was not on the pay-per-view, but we didn't think they would be because they would have showed everybody up. But anyway, so
they were on the pregame, though. They had a good match. They lost the tag titles to Zack Ryder.
They lost?
They lost the tag titles to Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, I think is his name. It was his first win in 200 and something matches. They were giving him the old losing streak gimmick.
No, wait a minute. The Revival got beat by the guy doing the losing streak gimmick.
Well, he had the losing streak. Now there's no streak to speak.
Well, yeah. Well, that just... I'm surprised they didn't bring Barry Horowitz in to fucking beat poor old Dash and Dawson. Well, anyway, that figures. But the pay-per-view, the Shakespeare opening, this is our stage. It was well done artistically and production-wise, but I thought I was on Broadway. And then the rap song hit, which I normally would hate, but then the video actually got kind of good and exciting. But the whole thing, this is our stage. Can you see that opening on a UFC pay-per-view? If you can't, then it doesn't need to be on a wrestling pay-per-view. I thought I was on Broadway. You
also don't see UFC fighters just talking and gushing about how thankful they are, so grateful they are to be here on the stage.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, did Conor McGregor say, "Oh, it's so great that I'm here in the main event of the UFC and they allowed me to be in this spot"?
No, he said, "Give me 20% of the company. I'm not fighting." Yeah,
yeah. The WrestleMania host was Alexa Bliss. What the fuck? It's 10 hours long already, and we need a host. This is what I wrote down at the time. I don't know who she is. Horrible verbiage she was given, boring delivery. Then she gets the obligatory pop because she intro the hit Hogan's music. And he gets the surprise pop. But did you notice the babies didn't go in the air and the pop didn't last that long?
Well, he's had a few scandals since he's last been on WWE
Well, I know
TV.
that, but I'm saying still, every time that he has showed up anywhere to this point, over the past 20 years, especially when you didn't know he was going to be there, you've got the nostalgia thing. Even the Ultimate Warrior, they cheered him the first 3 times they saw him till they realized he was a worthless sack of shit. Hogan got the surprise pop. Oh my God, I can't believe he's here. And then they're like, we're not sure we want him. It was brutal. And then he does a blah promo. How can you be Hulk Hogan and do a blah promo? And he called it he had AWA flashbacks to 1983. He thought he was in the Met Center in Bloomington, Minnesota, and he called it the MetLife Center instead. So he meant to say glad to be here in the Silverdome because that was his unfunny opening line, and then actually did call the stadium by the wrong name. Did you notice that?
I don't think Hogan can do a good promo anymore. If you watch him, whenever he comes out now, it's just like paint by numbers Hogan.
Anyway, so that was that. But then here comes Heyman, blows right by him, and the people woke up. And here, to me, this was the best part of the show. The entrances for Brock and Rollins were insane. This is the first time you're really getting a good look if you're watching a pay-per-view at that big-ass screen. The entrances were great, and then these guys were at a whole other level than most people you'll see on any wrestling show anywhere. Physically, for realism, for Seth Rollins is selling, Brock being a beast, and then doing all that damage to him, and then it looked like a squash, and then I don't know if you could have beat Brock Lesnar any better. Fuck you, motherfucker, in the nuts, super kick, and 3 of my finishes, boom, 1, 2, 3, fuck you, beast. The pop was huge for the low blow, the finish was great, I liked it, this to me was the best thing on the fucking show. Because it didn't outlast its welcome. It looked real. People were into it. The guys doing it looked like not only stars, but they knew what they were doing. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to kick off here. And then they introduce Lawler. And I just have to say, he will be 70 years old this November, and it will be 50 years since his first match in November. And 49 years. He started in 1970. So, but 70 years old this year and 49 years in the wrestling business, and he still wrestles, and Teflon King. Anyway, AJ versus Orton. And I wrote down, these guys are so good. They're so smooth. Everything looks good. It means something. They had a fantastic match. The pace was good. These guys are high-level performers. I'm thinking this ain't going to be bad. It wasn't the greatest AJ Styles or Randy Orton match I've ever seen, but it was pro wrestling done at a high level. And I thought AJ had hurt himself on that forearm off the top to the floor. But they said now it may have been another thing, but whatever the fuck, toward the end there, I don't know what else they were going to do or if they were going to do anything else, but AJ apparently hurt himself, but, nothing to complain about there. It wasn't the WrestleMania main event of all time, but it wasn't the WrestleMania main event, so I had no problem with this match. Lacey Evans does an entrance. Why? I wrote why 3 times. Why? This is fucking 7 hours or whatever. Why? I don't get it. I don't know who she is. I don't care. She just walks around all the time and leaves. SmackDown Tag Team title, The Usos versus Sheamus and Cesaro versus Nakamura and Rusev versus Ricochet and Black. Here we go. Now we head downhill. For what? Sheamus and Cesaro just walked out on WrestleMania. No jackets or anything. Not even a fucking windbreaker, guys. I love Claudio. This Rusev and Lana Russian gimmick is just presented so corny as shit that you can't believe it. It's just corny. I thought Ricochet and Black's entrances were cool. But now here's a 4-way for the tag team title. Scrambled eggs. That's what we used to call a match that just made no sense, and it was just guys doing stuff. And we didn't used to have a lot of them in those days. But scrambled eggs. I don't know what the fuck this was. I couldn't keep track of who was on whose side. If you're a once in a while viewer, which most people watching WrestleMania are, it was just guys doing stuff to each other over and over repeatedly because they got their chance to be at WrestleMania and they were going to make an impression. And in doing so, the only impression that was made was Claudio doing the giant swing spot. And that's what the least amount of impact and the least amount of fucking damage to your body that went on in this entire thing was the only thing that I remembered when it was over with. And I wish somebody'd count those fucking swings, because that has to be the all-time record for anything in wrestling. For any giant swing in wrestling, I should say. But that was fucking great. And, you know, and otherwise, I wrote this. This was a bunch of guys doing stuff to each other with good talent, but these kind of matches don't make sense. It's too much, and it's bleh. Everybody hit their big, great finish, and the Usos won. The Hall of Fame package was nicely done. The Hall of Famers were introduced. It was a little static, and then DX took forever. Then they had a Miz and Shane package. Shane turned heel on Miz. Fuck it. I like heel Shane, right? Now that he's a grown-up and he's not a member of the Green Street Posse 20 years ago, all the McMahons, except for Linda, are good heels. So I'm willing to work with this. I just, as I've said it before, I'll say it again. Never met him, but I'd say it to his face. I don't get the Miz. He's not intimidating. He speaks well, but I don't believe that he means it. I don't get him as a wrestler. He's fine on a reality TV show. I don't watch him, but he'd be fine on it. But I do not. He looks like a little kid. I remember the time. This was years ago. They had Rock and Austin in the ring on a Raw, and there's Miz in the middle of them. And the only thing I can think was, who is this little kid there in the ring with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin? But anyway, Falls Count Anywhere. Shane had a great introduction. He's a great heel. He's an athlete. He works his ass off. He doesn't have to do what he does. He doesn't have to be in the shape he's in. He's got to be almost 50, right? Late 40s. He's a family man. He's got money.
Yeah.
He started training late, and he trained as a gimmick. So he doesn't have any fundamentals, because he had to blow by that and train to be the gimmick that he was, in the Attitude Era. And yes, his trying to be mixed martial arts punches don't look too great, but goddamn, if he had started when he was 20 in wrestling school and the shape he's in and the athlete he is, he may have been a fucking AJ Styles. But then they go, finally, Shane goes the top rope. He's going to do the big spot. And here comes Miz's dad, who looks like a lump of shit. And that's how we know it's really his dad. Because if they got some guy that looked great, I mean, not everybody, like Papa Briscoe. We used Papa Briscoe, the Briscoe brothers' dad in Ring of Honor. He could kick the shit out of the whole locker room. You could tell. He looked like it. This fucking guy, all I could think of was Shane's balance while he's standing there on that top rope looking at the old man, right? So they get the father in the ring, and that took forever. And then here comes Miz back, and they had a good brawl for a little while, and then it all stopped for a while, and then they brawled for a while. I wrote, this was pitchy for me, dog. But then finally they clean out all the international announcers. Shane took his great bumps. But then they go up on the camera platform deal, and after all that they had done and all that shit, a superplex onto a crash pad. Obviously a crash pad. That was a crash pad to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an obviously in plain sight crash pad. Why is the crash pad next to the hard camera platform? Is it that, do they think the cameraman might get drunk? Might fall. Old fucking Howie on camera. He's been known to take a drink or two. We better put a crash pad around the fucking camera platform. Well, that killed it. That was a fart. Why do it? It's telling people, yes, this was the prearranged finishing sequence that we had designed beforehand to get a big pop from people, but obviously you can't do a superplex off a 40-foot fucking scaffold without doing it on a crash pad, so here's our crash pad. It killed the whole goddamn thing. I don't even know what to say. It's like they used to try to cover it up a little bit, put boxes or something, but no, that was just, we're going to do this bump onto a crash pad. And then they were selling it. And once again, I don't want to take that bump even on the crash pad. Right? I'm not going to. But once you've successfully, because you might fucking bounce off. I've seen that fucking crazy home video. You bounce off the fucking trampoline and get it. But once they've successfully landed on the crash pad, they were selling it. All right. Fart. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me do this properly. Okay. Here comes the women's tag team title. Sasha and Bailey versus Nia Jax and Tamina versus the Iconics versus Natalya and Beth Phoenix. Here comes the speed search button. Because I couldn't take it. If I didn't like the four-way with the guys, I wasn't going to like the four-way with the girls. And I'm sure I was right in that assessment. So I zip past that. Here comes Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston. Daniel Bryan comes out with his fat friend Rowan, who they named him a couple times, so I know his name is Rowan, and Kofi comes out with the New Day with trumpets. He's going for the fucking title, and they've still got the fucking trumpets and blah, blah, blah. They couldn't be serious. Having said that, this was a great modern style pro wrestling match. It wasn't violent like Brock's, but it was great work. It was more athletic work than Randy Orton versus AJ Styles, which was a classic pro wrestling style match. This was a great modern pro wrestling match. They had good pacing. They had psychology. The crowd went mental. They did a perfect clean finish. They had a huge pop, and it was a great deal overall. But this was not The Rock versus Austin or Taker versus Mick Foley in one of his incarnations, or this wasn't Kofi Kingston is not Rock, Austin, Taker, Mick level over. Neither is Daniel Bryan anymore. He got there at one point till they futzed around with him so much. So it was great, but this did not make a WrestleMania. They're not going to, like in Rock and Austin in the fucking Astrodome, where people remembered that, and that was, oh my God, and that was the match they came to see, and etc. But it was a great match. Nothing wrong with it.
Superstar Billy Graham came out very against making Kofi the champion, saying that he thinks Kofi needs to get on steroids. Did you see that?
Oh, Jesus Christ. And see, that's what... I wish that sometimes Superstar Billy Graham was an icon, but I wish sometimes some of these guys would not just think before with what all steroids has done to Billy Graham. I don't know if I'd be recommending them. And secondly, steroids ain't going to help Kofi Kingston become The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin. It just, and the people wanted to see that, and I have no problem with them giving it to him. And Daniel Bryan did a great job, and it was and Kofi Kingston did too. It was a great deal, but it wasn't a WrestleMania World Championship main event that you will remember for years and years and years. They showed the footage of the Andre Battle Royal. That's where I realized Strowman was in the doghouse somehow. Then Nash and Hall were the doctors for the Saturday Night Live guys. This is going 6 hours, and they've got Saturday Night Live guys getting their fingers stuck up their ass, whatever the fuck.
Now, you joked about it before, but this is the point of the show where I just decided I really need to lay down for a little bit, and I took a nap. So I missed a portion of the show here.
Okay, well, then in that case, you missed the U.S. title match between Rey Mysterio and Samoa Joe.
Yes, I did.
And Rey Mysterio makes his entrance, and I wrote at one time Rey Mysterio would have got a standing ovation. What the fuck have they done to him? Because it was like, I know it was a while in the show at that point, and the people were there, etc., but it was like, I mean, Rey was an icon. Then here comes Joe, and Joe looks mean as ever. And I guess now in hindsight, they're said Rey Mysterio may have been injured, but this was a 1 minute fucking squash match. Ray did a couple things. Joe blocked it and choked him out. Boom, done, over. That was it. After they introduced 87 sets of announcers, the foreign language announcers, which took longer than the match to announce all the announcers. Then here comes Drew McIntyre, I mean, I can't say anything more about the match because it didn't last as long as I just described it. Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. Both these guys look fucking great. They look like stars. They're in great shape. They've got size. They got the oomph, right? As soon as the match starts, here's what I wrote. They just start swinging at each other and doing moves. No lockup, no feel out. It's like they started in the middle of a match. And after 3 minutes, they were selling like it was 20 minutes in because they were doing these big things to each. I was like, did I miss the first half of this? What the fuck? And then Reigns, who did not get booed, because even the people in New York can't boo a fucking cancer victim. He eventually won. And that was pretty much all I got out of that. And that's a lot of, most of the matches now just start with, whether they ring the bell or not, sometimes I notice it and sometimes they don't. They just start doing moves to each other. There's no lockup. There's no feeling out. There's no arm drag. There's no headlock. There's no start to the thing. It's just, I punch you, you punch me, and we'll start running. It's like one time, who was it? The Eliminators that were in ECW.
Yeah.
They went to Memphis for like a month till they fired them because they were the shits. But Ricky Morton told me this new team comes in. He was there at the time, the Rock and Roll. So they're going to put the Rock and Roll versus the Eliminators. And so Ricky sat down with him, said, all right, guys, tell you what, how about this? I'll lock up with you. And then and they started calling him something for him to do. And they said, oh, we don't do that. You don't do what? We don't lock up. Ricky said, well, then how the fuck do you start the match? They're just, once they get in the ring, these entrances take for fucking bloody ever because they got to show off all the money they've spent. And then they just start doing shit to each other for no apparent purpose. So anyway, that was Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre. So the best thing on the show was the start. Then Randy and AJ was real good. Then there was some blah. Then Daniel Bryan and Kofi was really good. And maybe that should have been on at first. It got a better reaction. Even though it got a good reaction, it got a better one. And the rest of this stuff has been, Then here comes Elias. Actually, he doesn't come. He's sitting in the ring, but he's on tape. And this was actually a good deal, but what the fuck? They tape him playing the piano. They tape him playing the drums. He's in the ring with the guitar, and then he accompanies himself. He does a 3-piece band gimmick, all three of them being him. That would have been cool on Raw to show the guy's talented. On WrestleMania, my ass is going to sleep. Dude, get to the fucking point. So then he talked for a while, and it went nowhere. And I'm going, what the fuck does this have to do with wrestling? And I'm right. Why is it walk with Elias when he's sitting down? He never walks. I don't understand what walk with Elias is. This took for fucking ever. I wrote that. This took for fucking ever. And then he was interrupted by video on the video wall of baseball footage of Babe Ruth. And they not only had footage of Babe Ruth playing ball, but also they created a phony voiceover to sound like the radio announcer would have sounded when, as legend has it, Babe Ruth called his shot, called the home run, pointed to the outfield fence, right? There is no such call. Am I correct in this? There is no such call because the legend grew after that.
Right.
That he called the shot.
Right. There is no call, and there's still dispute whether the shot was actually called or not, or
yes,
whether he was just pointing at some of the players in the dugout or actually pointing to center field. Yes.
Yes. So I'm not, like I said at the start of this, although I wish now I would be on acid and imagine that there was no call. So they recreated a radio call that was never done for an act that may or may not have been, fucking legitimate. And that becomes John Cena's entrance video. And then Cena comes out as the doctor of thugonomics, which I guess he hadn't done in 15 years or whatever, because that's actually, I was so high on John when he was in OVW the prototype. I thought he's going to be the next Ric Flair. He's got all the fucking tools. When they brought him up there and didn't fucking get it, and they were about to fucking cut him, except he rapped for Stephanie on the fucking plane. Then when they put that gimmick on him, just because it broke my heart so bad, I never fucking watched The Doctor of Thugonomics because it was so silly and fucking stupid. And white rapper Vanilla Ice, this guy could have been, whatever. So I never saw it. But his rap was fucking hilarious. He can get away with this shit. He's so good. He talks so good. His material is so good. And nobody writes it but him. When he said that fucking Elias wasn't even a small dog. He was just a little piece of Shih Tzu. And, shit like that. But basically, he destroys the guy verbally. Then he destroys the guy with 3 or 4 fucking moves and leaves him laying there and walks out. So is Elias, who's mad at Elias? Why can't he ever play his song? Does he ever wrestle? Has he ever won a match? Why do the legends that only work part-time now show up and beat the fuck out of him and leave him laying in the ring on the biggest show of the year? These are all questions I was asking. Here we go now. No disqualification. Triple H versus Batista. Shawn Michaels on color. Does Michaels hate Batista? Or is he mad at him? Or is he trying to bury him? Or what? Do you have any knowledge of that?
I don't know. Why? What happened?
Through the entire match, all Michaels did was call him Dave. Well, Dave better do this, or Dave's that, or Dave, not he wasn't knocking him, but he was knocking. It's like Michaels does. He doesn't outright knock the guy so that the guy doesn't beat him up. He knocks him where he can plead innocence that he wasn't knocking him. Because the announcers are saying Batista, which sounds like something. And Shawn Michaels calling, yeah, Dave, old Dave there. Dave's not here, man. So Batista enters onto the stage in an SUV with Secret Service people in suits, security, and they line the fucking rampway as he comes down. Is it because he's from Washington that he got Secret Service people? I don't know what the fuck, right? Then he's so fired up, Brian, if I'm lying, I'm flying and my feet ain't left the ground. He tripped and fell down coming through the ropes, getting in the ring.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He did the deal where he ran up the steps and he's coming down the apron and he takes both hands on the middle rope. He was getting in the ring like a guy that ain't gotten a ring in 10 years, right? Or maybe ever. Because I don't know nobody gets in the ring this way unless you don't know what you're doing. He grabbed the middle rope with both hands. He threw his left foot over and bounced his right foot up before his left foot was over the middle rope, and he's trying to go through it sideways. His left toe caught the middle rope and it fucking stretched him out, and he ended up in like a fucking push-up position with both of his feet on the middle rope and both of his hands in the fucking ring to keep himself from going face first. And I'm like, if you could have taken his blood pressure at that point, I bet it was 400 over 350. But anyway, then Triple H's entrance had its own movie to go along with it somehow. And then they built him a car to come out. And then he had one entrance song to come to the bottom of the ramp, and then his normal entrance music to get from the specialized car from the bottom of the ramp into the fucking ring. Triple H's entrance was 6 fucking minutes. And then at the bell, they started doing shit to each other. Within 2 minutes, they were into the toolbox that they'd pulled out from underneath the ring. And Shawn's, Dave. Triple H used channel locks on Batista's fingers to supposedly break his fingers, then a chair. Then he got needle nose pliers and pulled Batista's nose ring out. Then he got a chain that was obviously gimmicked because he was whipping Batista with this chain that would have broken his back if he'd hit him with it one time with a real chain. They fought on the announce tables. All the gimmicks made it silly. The pliers to the nose ring and all this other shit made it silly. They went into the slow motion brawling. They barely used the ring whatsoever. They destroyed the announcers' tables. Triple H gets a sledgehammer, but he kept getting stopped before he used it. I've mentioned before, I'm sorry, but if you use a fucking sledgehammer, you better either destroy the guy's fucking brains with the first shot and be done with it, or don't use the sledgehammer because it's phony and it's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. You can barely get away with using a baseball bat if you go for the gut shot in the right situation, but a sledgehammer is fucking stupid. Nobody believes it. Finally, they got the steps in the ring. They were going slow as shit. Batista powerbombed Triple H on the steps. Pedigree, bullshit. Flair comes to ringside, gives Triple H another sledgehammer because he lost the first one. Triple H runs and jumps off the steps with a shitty looking shot where you cup the end of the sledgehammer and protect the guy with your. In other words, the only way in the world that you would not hit somebody with a sledgehammer if you were mad at them. And it looked like shit. And then a pedigree. I wrote down longest match ever held. I saw online that it was 24 minutes. I don't know if that was with the 6-minute Triple H whatever the fuck. This was the longest match I've ever seen. The people did not give a shit in a lot of places, most places, because it was just gaga, just bleh. And it's time, apparently, for Triple H to. Last year, he was in the best match. Him and Stephanie and Rousey and fucking Kurt, right? This year, he's in, so far, the worst match. This was the worst thing so far on the show, besides the girls' match that I skipped through. And actually, this would have been worse than that because at least the girls didn't use sledgehammers. Guess who was in the next worst match? Kurt Angle.
This is around the time I woke up.
How the mighty have fallen. I love Kurt Angle, but what the fuck? He gets Baron Corbin von Raschke for his retirement match. A bland, bald guy in street clothes. And Corbin wins. John Cena just destroyed some guy that may have talent if we ever saw him wrestle. But meanwhile, Baron Corbin beats Kurt Angle in Kurt Angle's retirement match. So then, God bless America. For the Intercontinental title, Lashley versus Finn Balor, who's the Demon. I didn't get to Demon's entrance. I don't know what the fuck was going on there. I like Bobby Lashley. I like Finn Balor. I liked Prince Devitt. I haven't seen a lot of Finn Balor. The bell rang and they started doing shit to each other. They fought out on the floor, and there was a nice spot where Lashley speared Balor off the apron from inside the ring. So they went through the ropes. But then Finn Balor hits a big power bomb and a foot stomp off the ropes. 1, 2, 3. Just pinned. This couldn't have been 4 minutes. Alexa Bliss comes out with more phony, stilted verbiage and announces the bullshit attendance of 82,265. She is absolutely rotten. And for some reason, R-Truth and some girl came out and danced for no apparent reason. What the fuck? I wrote. What the fuck? They just danced on the stage and then left.
That was Carmella. I believe she won the Women's Battle Royal earlier in the day.
Well, she should have quit while she was ahead. I guarantee you, especially if a lot of those people were from the New York, New Jersey area, which, by the way, did I mention sucks a donkey dick, that when they'd been sitting there for that long and R-Truth and some fucking girl come out and start dancing for no reason, if there'd have been snipers in the audience, we would have been announcing a tragedy. And then here it comes. The women's title match, Ronda versus Charlotte versus Becky. Charlotte comes in a helicopter, which was a nice nod to Flair in the Great American Bash 1985 in Charlotte, except they landed him in the stadium. This one landed in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's right.
So it landed in the stadium or in the parking lot, and then they showed her walking toward the stadium. Then Joan Jett played Ronda Rousey to the ring. Then Charlotte's entrance, then Becky's entrance. And by this point, they all three worked hard. They hit hard. Ronda Rousey, I thought especially, took great bumps. It was a great girls match. It wasn't as good as the mixed tag last year, not by a long shot. It didn't get over with the crowd, nor was it as well executed, nor was it as in any way as good. This would have gotten over in, I don't know about the pressure of putting it on last. This was not The Rock versus Steve Austin. This was not, go down the list of, this was not Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. This was not fucking, for God's sake, the ladder match with Michaels and Razor Ramon. This was not in the pantheon of great WrestleMania matches, but it was one of the better girls matches I've ever seen. And that's not being condescending. It's just the fact of the matter is there's been a lot more great guys matches than there has been great girls matches. Should this have been the main event of WrestleMania? I don't know. Should it have been the main event of a fucking 6 or 7 hour show? Hell no. Because by that point, I don't know if people would have liked it if they got in the ring and Vince announced he was going to give out fucking free $100 bills when you walked out of the fucking building. So it was fine. It was a great girls match. It wasn't a WrestleMania main event. There wasn't really a WrestleMania main event on this WrestleMania, except maybe for Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar. That's the only thing that really combined crowd getting into it, it being well done and well put together, and the guys being in it legitimate superstars. It had everything. And I don't know if it was a WrestleMania main event. And that was the best thing to me on the fucking show. And good God, it was just hard work. I've got 8 pages of fucking notes just so I would remember what to knock.
This was the first Mania without The Undertaker in a long time. Did you miss him?
I missed a lot of things, including my 6 hours of my life I'll never get back. By the way, here's those notes. There we go. Fucking hell. Now it's got to be about the show instead of the content of the show. And it's the content is not as important as just having the show now. But I bet you nobody that went to it will go back if they ever go to MetLife Stadium again, unless they do it over 2 days or give everybody their own personal helicopter.
All sizzle, medium steak.
Well, it was a Morton Steakhouse sizzle and a fucking Waffle House steak, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to be a prick. There's been a lot of great WrestleMania matches, just not necessarily on this program. Anyway, have we gone on long enough to make up for the time that we left the people Cornette-less?
I guess so. I mean, this isn't the longest episode, but because we discussed WrestleMania, it feels like it was a lot longer than it was.
I want to move past this, folks. By next week, we move past the bad parts. By next week, I want to be chipper voiced and have more energy, and we will talk about the Viceland Dark Side of the Ring episode and my adventures in West Virginia, and more details on the Crockett Cup and many more things coming up. But now that we've got this out of the way, for heaven's sake, sorry you had to wait so long for substandard programming, but I got to have something to work with. Hey, watch me on MLW on BN Sports for the next 2 months, because that will try to get some of this WrestleMania taste out of your mouth. And at least if a match is bad, I say so in a very professional way. But most of it was good. And we had a lot of fun. But I'm not going to be joining Jimmy Havoc's fan club anytime. I'm sorry. I'm not knocking the product, but it was a disservice to I apologize for calling it. It was a disservice to the World Heavyweight Championship of Major League Wrestling. I know they had a lot of UK fans in attendance. I met some of them. There was what do they call it? A groundswell or some support for having a high profile UK talent on the program. I sure wish it had been one that actually wrestled instead of, fucking. I think I said he had more stitches in him than my Aunt Lola's quilts. He's a human scar. It was not a shiny, but everything else was good, folks. Keep an eye out for MJF. He's going to be a superstar. And you can also watch me now that I've alienated all the UK fans talking about their hardcore guy. You can watch me in UK and in Ireland on Free Sports for the first time in ages. I thought it was the first time I'd be on TV regularly since the WWF days, but somebody reminded me that TNA was on television in the UK for a while I was there. I was just used to people showing slides on the wall of a barn of TNA wrestling. But I was on briefly there, but now I'll actually be on a show that doesn't waste all of its resources and is not a vanity project by a goddamn the daughter of a fucking oil millionaire who makes tons of money on also breeding bulls. Did I ever tell you the story of how that Dixie Carter's father made $2 million profit one year selling bull cum?
No.
Yep. Side business of Panda Energy was apparently he had a big ranch down there in Texas, and he bred those thoroughbred bulls and told Jim Ross when they had a brief flirtation with trying to convince JR to come and help him, told JR that he had made $2 million the previous year selling the bulls, basically letting the bull impregnate these other bulls. So he made $2 million on bull cum. And his daughter couldn't make $2 million on anything. Yeah, I mean, she could make $2 million. She'd start with 4 and make it 2 quickly. But anyway, I got to go. Join us again next week. When we do this even better, it'll be hard not to. This could be the Wrestlemania of podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, I love all of you. I'm trying to get my rest. I'm trying to get my voice back, and I'm trying to be as good as I can be. And that's all we can really ask for out of people or out of life. So until next week, when I'll try to be better and as good as I can be, thank you. Fuck you, New York City, and bye-bye, everybody.